In my previous video, I discussed the One D&D version of the Druid base class and the Circle of the Moon subclass, and maybe it shouldn't have been, but the response has been genuinely shocking to me. You see, when I do my evaluations and analysis for my One D&D videos, I do my best to remain in the dark about what the community is saying about it. I avoid YouTube videos and Reddit discussions as I don't want my views or opinions to be tainted or influenced by others, and generally speaking, my thoughts largely tend to align with the overall impressions amongst the community at large, with maybe a few hot takes here and there. But this one was way off. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about Wild Shape in One D&D, the playtest in general, and how we discuss and provide feedback. I want to start off by acknowledging that there are many different aspects of the revised Druid class as a whole and the Circle of the Moon subclass that people have taken issue with. However, I'm going to try and keep this discussion largely framed within the realm of Wild Shape and not about the entire class or the way that it feels. To that end though, there are even some complaints about Wild Shape that I won't be able to address simply because if I tried to touch on everything, this video would be like 3 hours long and not really have any coherent flow. There's a lot more to this discussion that goes well beyond just a 12-minute video. In regard to my Druid video, I was blown away by the sheer amount of vitriol being spewed toward me over an opinion about something which ultimately amounts to make-believe, and I get it. I love Dungeons & Dragons, and I am extremely passionate about the game too, but that just doesn't justify some of the comments on that video. The version of Wild Shape presented in the Unearthed Arcana represents a dramatic departure from the current iteration available in 5th edition. This was obviously going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and it's understandable. We are attached to our characters and we love the way that they work. We created them for a reason, so when someone says that they strip Druid of all of its fun and nuance and depth, that very well might be true for that person. For others though, these changes might actually be what makes them want to even try the class in the first place. In the title of the video, I refer to the One D&D Druid as peak design, and while somewhat hyperbolic, it is still a statement that I largely stand by. What many in the comment section seem to overlook is that something is fully capable of being both good design but still be a bad implementation of it, and perhaps the current iteration of the One D&D Druid Wild Shape is an excellent example of just such a thing. What is crucial in these discussions is to be able to separate power from concept. Numbers and text are incredibly easy to change. While I was accused of it, I never once said that the new version of Wild Shape is better than the previous one, or honestly, even that it was good. What I did say, and I do fully maintain, is that the design approach taken in the One D&D version is objectively better from a game design perspective, even if its execution was flawed. The templated approach to Wild Shape is leaps and bounds ahead of the current implementation of the feature. As it stands right now, there are 207 monsters with the Beast tag in 5th edition, the vast majority of which can be wild shaped into throughout the course of a druid's career. There is no world where presenting a player with all of the class rules, the 7 subclasses, the 176 spells that they are capable of casting across all 9 levels of spells, and then just throwing in 207 monster stat blocks, or 152 if you're not playing a Circle of the Moon, to pour over, analyze, and figure out which ones work well in certain situations can be considered a good approach to game design. There's a reason the Druid was the least played class. For clarity, I'm not saying that it can't work. I can definitively say that there is a subset of people for who this is amazing and it's exactly what they want out of the class, and there is nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to insult or debase anyone who is looking for that experience, but I suspect that the player base at large is not looking for that. At the time of writing, despite the Druid video being my most disliked video on YouTube by a large margin, the ratio is still decisively in favor of likes, sitting at 83 to 62. And despite generating an initial loss of 2 subscribers, that same video has now generated 19 for a total net gain of 17. And while no, it's not a lot, for a channel of my size, it isn't insignificant. But more importantly, what this tells me is that despite the overwhelming majority of comments being extremely negative, even in just the very small sample size of my channel, more people see what I'm getting at than don't, and are likely in favor of this overall design direction than aren't. Take that though for whatever it's worth. The huge irony here is that I'm also sure that there is a massive overlap between the subset of players that are dissatisfied with the changes to Wild Shape and the same players who vocally criticize how bad and broken the challenge rating system is, and it is broken. It seems like a no-brainer then that removing yet another facet of the game that was solely reliant on a broken system would be a good thing. Another issue with the current implementation of Wild Shape is its potential to limit design space. Whenever the team is creating new monsters, special consideration needs to be made for any creatures that would receive the beast tag, as depending on its available features and abilities, it could have significant unintended consequences should a druid transform into it. As mentioned earlier, the templated approach presented in this UA is pretty much an objectively better approach to game design than the version available in 5e, but that's not to say that this implementation is without issue. Let me reiterate, the One D&D version would require significant tuning if it were to see publication. The three templates, Animal of the Land, Sea, and Sky, are representations of the exact same limitations presented in the 2014 Player's Handbook. The difference is that now, instead of having up to 207 stat blocks to look through, there's 3. There are so many solutions to this problem that don't involve scrapping the concept entirely. Many have pointed out that the base AC of 10 for the Animal of the Land is far too low. That's not a problem. Make it 12, 13, or 14. You lose the unique abilities that certain beasts granted. Also, not a problem. This can be something as simple as adding actions that clearly state arachnid form and being able to shoot a web or spider climb, or a wolf form and gaining pack tactics. These alternate forms in the stat block could even also provide additional bonuses to AC. This isn't even a unique solution, as there are plenty of creatures that already exist in the game, such as vampires, that already employ this exact concept. And if neither of those options work, we can always just add a few more templates, though this should still be kept to a relatively small number to avoid the exact same problem that the designers are trying to get away from. Or perhaps they can adopt the invocation style approach that has been suggested all over the place. We don't like that druids lose access to all of their features in wild shape? Okay, let's make it so they don't. The ability to become tiny comes way too late and the 11th level feature is terrible? Easy, add the ability to be tiny back into the template. Text is so easy to fix when it's couched in the right design, and that is the point that I'm trying to emphasize. Another common complaint that I've come across is the notion that wild shape is now useless in combat as a result of the low AC, and because you maintain your current hit points when you transform, and to that my response is, why does it have to be good in combat? I will preface this by saying that I fully believe that there should be a druid subclass that is focused around combat in wild shape, and to that end, the changes made to the Circle of the Moon druid make no sense. There are plenty of features though that exist in the game that serve nothing but utility purposes. The difference here is that with the druid, the entire class is designed around the central mechanic, so it might not feel great to have the core functionality of the class serving as a support. However, the druid is also a full caster, and using some of the solutions we've already discussed can resolve this same problem. During these discussions, something that's brought up constantly is the question of why would I even bother transforming, and I will be completely honest, the way that wild shape works right now in the One D&D version gives a player very little incentive to want to wild shape, but what's convenient here is that both this question and the issue of wild shape in combat are solved by the simple tweaking to the templates mentioned earlier. Maybe even throw in some temporary hit points when transforming. I understand that this still potentially removes an aspect of the class that may have been loved, but it's also likely that the team could be trying to design away from that for reasons that might be unclear at the moment. Again, there's just so much that we don't know. I want to be super clear about something here. I fully get it, and I understand why people are frustrated and dissatisfied with the revised druid. It fundamentally changes the experience that people have come to know and love for close to a decade, and to many, it has removed what they found fun about the class, and that is truly unfortunate. I also want to reiterate here that I am in no way saying that the proposed One D&D version of the class is good, or that this is the exact version that I think should be published. That isn't what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that I think the direction that they are moving with the class is a generally positive one that, if tweaked correctly, can still provide that same rich and fulfilling experience that players are currently enjoying, but without all of the hassle. Because we need to remember that none of these proposed changes are final. This leads me quite nicely into the second topic that I wanted to discuss, which is the playtest as a whole. The purpose of this entire Unearthed Arcana One D&D playtest experience is to push the envelope, challenge our expectations and concepts for the game, and to make us think about things that we might not have considered in the past. I think this UA was a perfect example of that. I have no doubt in my mind that the designers knew that there would be considerable pushback to the proposed druid changes, but that does not mean that this wasn't a worthwhile exercise. From my perspective, I'm actually really happy to see them trying something that is so radically different and might just fall on its face, and not just reprinting a slightly better version of what already exists in 5th edition. The entire purpose of this process is to iterate and to try new things and to see what sticks. I honestly don't know if the Druid changes are going to survive playtesting. My gut says that they won't, but if they don't, I sincerely hope it's because people took the time to sit down and try it out and find that the design that this experience provides is not a positive one, and not simply because people are posting snap judgments before they've even tried it, and keeping in mind that power and concept should be kept separate for the purposes of evaluation. Dungeons & Dragons is very clearly moving in a direction that many diehard fans are not in favor of, and that is a completely reasonable and justifiable thing to be angry about. With pretty much every edition, the game has become a bit more streamlined, a bit simpler, and a bit easier to get into as a new player, but I'm not as convinced that that is as bad a thing as many are making it out to be. There's the obvious cynical argument that if the game is more broadly accessible, more people will buy the books, and therefore Wizards of the Coast makes more money, and there is certainly an element of truth to that. But on the flip side, I would also love it if more of my friends would be able to get into this game with relative ease and not feel like they need to form a study group or something just to play a game. I understand that D&D is a different kind of game, and I understand that its roots are also very different. But I'm also a fan of progress, and I hate the idea of not moving something forward because it's just how we've always done it. I know that some people will say that the best part of Druid is digging through the stat blocks and that it's not complicated to play, but I would hazard a guess that the majority of players don't feel that way. The beauty here is that One D&D isn't replacing 5e, just as 5th edition didn't replace any of the editions before it. You can, and many people still do, enjoy playing previous editions of the game, just as they do other tabletop RPGs. If whatever One D&D becomes isn't the game for you, that's okay. No one is forcing you to play it. My only ask is that we examine these playtest materials for what they are, which are playtest materials, and to keep an open mind. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, though I am fairly confident that it's not going to go down particularly well. If you did enjoy it though, consider taking a look at some of my other content and subscribing to the channel, as every single one does significantly help other people get a look at my channel. But otherwise, take care.